Today, I am joined by Roger Stone to go over some of the biggest stories in the news. There are 15 days left until the presidential election. Roger, I don't know how many days there's left until we actually learn who the president is. We now have states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin saying it could take days to figure out who's won the election.
You have a very good point there, Stephen. I am more concerned actually about the period between the election and the certification than I am the election itself. I mean, based on my experience, when you analyze the most recent polling, it reminds me very, very much of the polling that was done for Ronald Reagan at the end of the 1980 race. At this juncture, both President Trump and Vice President Harris are underwater, meaning they have a more unfavorable views than they do have favorable views among the voters. This, by the way, has always been true of Trump. When he was elected in 2016, it was accurate then. It was also accurate in 2020 when I believe he won the election. And it remains a constant, but President Trump's favorable, unfavorable rating has remained the same. There are slightly more people with an unfavorable view. What's significant is Kamala Harris's unfavorable rating has climbed and continues to climb, while her favorable rating continues to drop. Now, when you begin to look at the question of who would handle the country's problems better, whether it is the economy or whether it is solving the fight between Ukraine and Russia, or whether it is getting inflation under control, or whether it is bringing down the price of groceries, or whether it is bringing down the price of gasoline, or who would best seal our border and end this crime epidemic. Now Trump solidly outpoints Kamala on all of those issues, and in every case, he's well over 50% of the voters feel that Trump, rather than Kamala Harris, would better handle those issues. This is identical to what we saw with Reagan. It is identical to the reason why late-breaking undecideds, which is an exceedingly small group here, should break for Trump in the end. So I'm confident that Donald Trump will get more votes on Election Day, will get more popular votes, will get more electoral votes. And then, of course, the nonsense begins.
You know, my wife and I were watching the Al Smith dinner at 1 a.m. So this could have contributed to this. But Jim Gaffigan said, you know, there's still a small group of undecided voters that will go into the booth and vote for Trump. And it's mostly the Biden family. That made me laugh so hard. Do you think at this point, most people have decided whether they are leaning Trump or leaning Kamala? Or are they really looking for if there's an October surprise that's going to sway their vote the opposite direction?
Well, first of all, that was a very funny line, but it speaks to a certain truth. I mean, I think Joe Biden at this point has divided emotions. He was forced out of this race. The polls, as he correctly said on The View, currently show that he was doing just as well as Kamala. If Kamala had any prospect to beat Trump, which I don't think is going to happen, Biden was probably more viable than she was. He was forced out in a midnight coup. He was forced out by Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris participated, I think, in a threat to use the 25th Amendment to remove Biden if he refused to drop from the race. That has, of course, been reported by a number of reputable reporters. The way that works is a majority of the cabinet plus the sitting vice president can trigger the 25th Amendment. The president at that point has, however, the right to appeal it to the Congress. This is why it was crucial for Barack Obama to line up Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who is still the de facto head of the Democrats, as well as Hakeem Jeffries, so that there was no way out for Joe Biden. He did not want to drop out of this race. There's no question that he has a deep-seated hatred for President Trump, but I don't think he's too fond of Kamala Harris either, because she was a participant in this bloodless coup. So it's kind of ironic. The people who are constantly preaching to us about democracy had a completely undemocratic process under which they dumped a sitting president, forced him out of the race, and nominated a candidate that not a single Democrat primary or caucus voter voted for. It's really quite astounding. Yet they have the nerve to lecture us about democracy. To go to your question directly, the pool of undecideds, particularly in the swing states, is extremely small. But also because voting starts much earlier, it's already going on in Pennsylvania, started today in Florida, and a number of states, the term October surprise is a little outdated. Anything that happens the next 2 weeks would no doubt have its greatest impact on those actually planning to vote on Election Day, which is what I am planning to do. This administration is capable of absolutely anything. Three things really disturb me. One, this new Department of Defense directive, which basically authorizes not only the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens, but also authorizes them to conduct domestic intelligence operations. That means spying is basically what they're saying. This is deeply disturbing, and you have to wonder whether this is being done in preparation for the post-election period. Then secondarily, you have an executive directive signed by Biden, which is the renewal of an executive order signed by President Trump. I think in President Trump's case, he signed this order, which calls for an assessment of potential foreign interference in our election. I think he signed it to prove at the time that there was no Russian collusion, which we now know definitively there was not. They can say there was all they want. They can say, oh, Paul Manafort shared proprietary polling numbers with a Russian intelligence. No, that didn't happen. Sorry. The people you're talking about, the man you're talking about, Konstantin Kilimnik, it was a U.S. Intelligence asset. And no, I never trafficked with WikiLeaks on any stolen emails. That was never proven because it's false. But those are the things they try to point to justify their whole Russian collusion nonsense. Now you combine that with the comments of the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who says that anyone who interferes with the election process on Election Day will be prosecuted. Well, what do we mean by interfere? Ask questions? If you ask questions, is that interfering? Not really clear. And then a second claim by him that anyone who interferes with the certification process on January 6th will be prosecuted. I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer, but my reading of the Electoral College Act is quite different than the talking heads at MSNBC. So again, if there is actual proof of voter fraud, not allegations, not circumstantial evidence, not theories, but actual proof, well, you'd be prosecuted according to them if you even raise the question. These things are very troubling to me.
Yeah, no, I've read about those. They're troubling to me as well. I'm reading right here, breaking news on the Daily Mail. Donald Trump is predicted to win with 312 electoral votes, Kamala Harris achieving 226 electoral votes. Is Trump just laser focused on winning the Electoral College, since at the end of the day, the popular vote doesn't win? What is his main focus right now? Roger, I need to take just a 45-second break. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending 5 million Americans letters telling them, pay up or else. So I want you to understand something. Do not waive your rights and speak with the IRS on your own. They are not your friend. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal with the IRS. Now, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay or you live on a fixed income, they can help you finally resolve your tax burden once and for all. I want you guys to call 800-958-1000 for a free private consultation. Again, call their 800 number or visit tnusa.com/Gardner. Okay, back to the interview.
Yes, I think that has to be the priority of any experienced campaign. We don't elect the president by popular vote. Now, I think he's going to win the popular vote. And this trip to California recently had great value for two reasons. One, he was able to raise money. Recognize that Kamala Harris is very, very overwhelmingly outspending us on cable television, certainly on digital advertising, on mail, on phones, on virtually every type of campaign communications. However, it doesn't mean that we aren't doing those things, advertising, so on, at competitive levels. We are. So despite her overwhelming advantage, let's just say digital advertising, which I think is becoming more and more effective and efficient, it's not moving the needle for her. It isn't working. So yes, although California will go for the Democrat, although California is very definitely now a blue state, there's still millions and millions of Republicans in that state, and you need every vote for the national popular vote. So this, I think, also explains the brilliance of him going to Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden appearance allows you to dominate the media, not only in New York, but in northern New Jersey, which could be close, eastern Pennsylvania, which is pivotal, as well as Connecticut, which is unfortunately my native state, but probably not really in play. There are millions of Republicans within that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut media market, and they will all count. So even though you're unlikely to carry Connecticut, you want to have the maximum vote out of there you can possibly get. And that's why the Madison Square Garden appearance, for example, I think is brilliant.
Yeah, he's made so many incredible moves. New Jersey, going to the Bronx, California. Like you said, like all of these have been such good moves for raising money, raising awareness, taking votes away. I'm reading today that there's going to, from this particular year, there's going to be two main events. The Trump assassination is going to go down as one of the most incredible things to happen to our country and to Donald Trump. And also this working at McDonald's. This is actually a much bigger deal than most people realize. People came away from this going, wait a minute, this guy can talk to management. He can talk to the marketing people. He can talk to the janitor, the front cashier, the window, the fry maker. This is America's president. This is a guy that understands the American people. What were your thoughts on him going to McDonald's?
I thought it was brilliant because I saw the Donald Trump that I've known for 45 years. See, the thing is, he's a regular guy. And unlike, say, Hillary Clinton, who hates people, he actually likes people. He gets strength from people. He likes to hear their stories. He likes to hear their circumstances. This is a guy who loves campaigning. He loves getting out there among the average folks. And he's not an elitist. He may be a billionaire. He may be the best known capitalist in the country, but he's never lost the common touch. He talks the language of the average person. And because that, I think is why he became president, if you want to know the truth. He's not a politician. He will never be a politician. He leads a political movement. He's a political figure, but the last thing in the world he is a politician. Speaking to the other question, of course, assassination, this continues to be a concern of mine because the people who currently control our government, some of whom engaged in treasonous activity during the Russian collusion hoax and during the two impeachments, they fear prosecution, not revenge, but prosecution. People who committed crimes should be prosecuted. I didn't commit any crimes, either did General Flynn. We were framed, in my case, to try to pressure me to testify falsely against the president, which, Stephen, you and I have talked about this, I refused to do. But you have people here who are engaged in serious treasonous activity, and they fear prosecution. So they're not going to give up the levers of power easily. We've all seen the bite of Congressman Jamie Raskin basically saying, we don't care if he wins the election. We're not going to certify him. The Congress is not going to certify him. What's ironic is that's what they say Trump did in the last election, and they say that was a crime. So why wouldn't it be a crime if Jamie Raskin tried that? It's vexing.
Yeah. So Trump became the first president to ever work at a McDonald's. He also became the first president to give a press conference from a fast food drive-up window. He's so brilliant, the way that he is just able to grab attention and get people to listen to what he had to say. A leaked memo from the McDonald's Corporation this morning says that Kamala Harris was offered the opportunity to work at a McDonald's. Also, Tim Walz. Neither of them have accepted. Do you think that they're just too busy? Are they too good to go? Do they maybe feel like it would be copycatting Donald Trump at this point? Why wouldn't they go do the same thing?
Look, I think Kamala Harris particularly has a problem. She cannot operate within any forum in which she might be asked actual legitimate questions by an actual legitimate journalist, because she can't answer them. She shows no ability to think on her feet. She doesn't really know why she's running. It's all negative. It's all Trump's dividing the country. Trump's all is a campaign of grievances. Well, if they tried to bankrupt you illegally, if they tried to lock you up illegally, if they tried to destroy your life, I guess you'd complain about it too. Oh no, Trump's complaining. It's all about grievances. I think he has every legitimate reason to be upset and angry about those things. She has no plan other than a continuation of our current policies. She's admitted that. Biden's admitted it. Although in his case, I think that was a death hug when he said, oh no, she was in on every decision. There was nothing that she wasn't in on. And then when asked point blank, as you know, Kamala was asked, what would you do different? She said, well, really nothing comes to mind. So she offers us a continuation of the same policies that have gotten us record inflation, that have driven us to the brink of war, who've gotten us some of the highest gasoline prices we've ever seen, who've opened our border, causing a crime epidemic and a drug epidemic. She has no solutions to these problems. In fact, she doesn't even recognize them as problems. So the reason she won't go to McDonald's is she would have to submit herself to questioning by the media, and she's not going to do that in any uncontrolled environment. And then in the case of Tim Walz, my guess is that Kamala's handlers won't let him do that for fear that he'll say something stupid. Look, nobody goes into a debate and calls themselves a knucklehead. Nobody with half a brain.
Only a knucklehead would admit to being a knucklehead on national TV, right? So you mentioned that Kamala herself admitted nothing would be different. So prices would be higher. The war, Russia, Ukraine, Israel would be the same. The amount of taxpayer money taken to give to Ukraine. There was a woman during the Pittsburgh Steelers game yesterday. She ran across the football field holding a sign. Trump will close the border. Kamala will leave the border open. She was arrested. I think she was trying to prove that point. But I want to show a clip here really quick, Roger. This is the entire stadium chanting USA, USA for the president. NBC gave almost zero coverage to a former president and the Republican frontrunner being at the Pittsburgh Steelers game. Do you think that was on purpose? Because Taylor Swift was shown dozens of times up in her suite.
Yeah, the only reason this election is close is really because of the incredible bias of the mainstream media. Now, I really have not seen anything like it before. Look, they have always been biased against us, but at least they sometimes pretended to be unbiased. Every once in a while, you might get a balanced story. That no longer happens. So there is a campaign of distortion, and the mainstream media, which no longer has the monolithic control on communications that they did have. They obviously have to compete with social media, even though Facebook is still tremendously manipulated and censored. Google, do a Google News search under Donald Trump. Just try it. The first 5 pages are all negative stories. There won't be one balanced story. So, no, they're not going to show that because it's beneficial. But Tim Walz went to the Michigan game, and he was roundly booed. He was condemned by the crowd. They didn't show much of that either. There's a willful attempt to control what we see and hear about this race. That's why Trump going to McDonald's is so brilliant, because it breaks through that din. It breaks through that blockade, that blackout of what's really going on here.
Yeah. Kamala Harris has said Donald Trump is too old to be president. He's exhausted. He can barely keep up with the demand of his own schedule. Yet people did analysis, and Kamala Harris speaks on average 7 minutes at her event, and Donald Trump speaks on average 90 minutes at his event. Who is too exhausted? Who is unable to connect with the people long term? These lies get very old, but what are your thoughts on the juxtaposition of these two timelines?
Well, first of all, I've known Donald Trump for 45 years. I'm going to go to Madison Square Garden with him at the end of the week on Sunday. I talk to him on an occasional basis. I see no slowing down whatsoever on his part, none. His stamina, his energy is extraordinary. Is he tired? You'd be tired too if you were doing 3 events a day and flying across the country barnstorming. This, by the way, is one of the key reasons why he beat Hillary in the closing days of 2016, because she was coasting and he was working round the clock. Beyond that, Kamala Harris, she's not really running a campaign. It's more of a psyop. So they have to book a hot rock act for the venue to make sure they can fill the venue. You've seen some of these GPS studies that show that the vast majority of the people at her rally are the same people who were at the last rally, meaning she has to bus people in. And she can't sustain an entire interview with Fox. Her interview with Fox is, as you know, supposed to be 30 minutes, and they call it at the end of 20 because it's a train wreck. And she doesn't answer any questions. Everything, no matter what it is, it's Donald Trump's fault. No matter what the issue is, even though she's been in office for 3.5 years, it's Donald Trump's fault. Then the funniest part of that interview is when she says to Brett Baier, "Brett, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about." He says, "No, actually, I have no idea what you're talking about." There's not much there. There's also huge internal fighting inside her campaign because Barack Obama has sent 3 of his top people to try to bail her out. And they are fighting with Kamala's staff. I think there's a lot of internal disagreement about strategy. Meanwhile, the clock is running down.
Yeah. During that same Brett Baier interview, he said 79% of the country believes the United States is on the wrong track. You've been in office the last 3.5 years. What do you say about that? And her answer was, well, Donald Trump is running for president too. What is she talking about? Like, he's not been running the country for 3.5 years, or else we wouldn't have seen gas prices spike. We wouldn't have seen food prices spike. We wouldn't have seen everything in our life become more expensive. And her answer is, he's running for office too. What were your thoughts when you heard that?
Yeah, it was right after that is when she says, "You know what I mean?" He says, "No, I have no idea what you mean." It's a nonsensical answer. Donald Trump has not run the country for the last 3.5 years. In the period in which he was running the country, we had the most robust economy in our history. We had the lowest gas prices in our history. We had the lowest rate of inflation in our history. We had the lowest rate of unemployment among all Americans, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, young, old, urban, rural. The all the statistics put out by this administration are badly, badly cooked. I had Barry Habib, one of the country's most respected experts on both the housing and mortgage industry, as well as a shrewd economic analyst, who points out that the latest job numbers, like the ones before them, are completely manipulated. And he said, oh, they will be adjusted, but they'll be adjusted after the election. So last time they claimed that they created 818,000 jobs. The real number was closer to 600, but more importantly, 90% of those jobs were part-time jobs. They weren't full-time jobs. So you got to read the small print. No, they're running the country into the ground, and they're searching for a way to make this election about Donald Trump. Any election is about the party in power, and they have been the party in power. They have to wear this record. Kamala Harris thinks she can just say, oh, I'm going to hire 1,500 more Border Patrol agents and I'm going to seal our border. And then she counts on her friends at ABC and NBC or some of these alternative rappers or alternative influencers like Charlemagne the God to say, oh, no, she was never the border czar. That's just not true. But she was never in charge of our southern border, when we can see with our own eyes that Biden indeed appointed her to that position. Now, I would admit to you, Stephen, the title czar was invented by the media, but it's still accurate that it was her responsibility. She thinks she can just walk away from that and nobody will notice.
Yeah. When Donald Trump says he wants to add 10,000 more Border Patrol agents, sign executive orders to give them authority to actually do their job of protecting America, he's going to go to Congress for a 10% raise and a $10,000 signing bonus to get things going. Do you believe that is something that he could actually pull off within the first 100 days? Do we see a completely different southern border?
Yes, the first thing we can do is just put back in place the executive orders that were repealed by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, let's be very clear. And this, I thought J.D. Vance did a superb job in his debate, but I kind of wish this had been covered. It's very simple. The Langford bill, the so-called bipartisan bill that they keep saying would have sealed the border and solved the problem, if only Trump had supported it, would not have sealed the border. In fact, it actually grandfathered 2 million more illegals in the country, 150,000 a month that would have been allowed to come into the country. Most of the money in that bill, by the way, was for Ukraine. Wasn't even for the southern border. But when you put that aside, it pays for lawyers for the illegals. It pays for processing of the illegals, but it would not in any way have sealed the border. It's simply a lie. And Republicans in the House and Senate announced they wouldn't support it before Trump's position was even publicly known. So the idea that he killed a bill that would have fixed our southern border because he wanted it to be open to remain a campaign issue, that's completely false. All people have to do is, as my good friend Byron Donalds, the congressman from Florida, has pointed out, just read the bill. Read the bill. It would solve none of the problems.
Do you think, now that you've had time to witness J.D. Vance defending Trump, brilliantly articulating their message, do you think he was the right choice for VP candidate?
Yes, absolutely. I thought so at the time. Of all the candidates that the president looked at, I thought he was our best choice. I did like the idea of Tulsi Gabbard, to be honest with you, because I love the bipartisan nature of that at a time of national emergency. She's now an independent, as you know, a former Democrat. And I was intrigued by that idea, but I always thought that J.D. Vance was underrated after he was initially picked. A number of Republicans came to me grumbling, why did Trump pick this guy? Well, if you watch that debate, you now know why he picked that guy. He's exactly the right guy. He used the debate, I think, to very effectively bury this caricature that they had painted of him as some kind of Neanderthal, some kind of caveman, some kind of woman hater. It's all nonsense. This guy came from a very humble, difficult background. He's earned everything he has. I think he's now emerged as a surprise asset to the ticket. I always thought that that his moment of definition would come in the debate, and indeed it did. Did he leave a couple openings? Sure. But I think it was more important that he show people who he really was, so that they had some level of confidence that he was prepared to step into the job if, God forbid, he should need to do so. So, yes, I'm happy with his selection. I'm particularly happy with the fact that he's not a neocon, that he's not prepared to ship another $20 billion to Ukraine, that he's not interested he's interested in finding a solution and stopping the killing in the fight between Russia and Ukraine. He obviously would oppose continuing to finance Iran. You send Iran $190 billion in unfrozen assets, and then you act surprised that they're going to use that to develop their nuclear weapons capability or to finance Hamas or Hezbollah. I mean, it's a wrong-headed philosophy to begin with. It's all it's really doing is carrying out Barack Obama's decision to build Iran into a superpower as some kind of balance to Israel, with the idea that would create greater stability in the region, when, of course, the exact opposite is true. It was Trump's sanctions, very harsh sanctions against Iran, that had them on the verge of bankruptcy. They're an oil-rich company, but nobody would buy their oil. Not even the Chinese, their allies, would buy their oil because they didn't want to be subjected to Trump's sanctions. Once Biden lifted those sanctions and gave them billions of dollars, it's not surprising that they attacked Israel.
Yeah. I always thought that was such a stupid move, but it did come from a Biden. So you mentioned J.D. Vance being a surprise asset. Another surprise asset has been Elon Musk. I've been blown away by his support, his brilliance. But now Joe Scarborough of Morning Joe and billionaire Mark Cuban recently told Bill Maher that Elon Musk and his businesses should be punished and investigated for supporting Donald Trump. Now there's talk of going after Elon Musk for giving away money in Pennsylvania, not to support Donald Trump, but to sign a petition for freedom of speech and the Second Amendment. Musk has also hinted that he worries he'll be hunted down and arrested if Kamala Harris wins. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and these news stories developing?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk because I was one of the first people banned on Twitter back in 2017. I had 980,000 followers at that time, and I was pro-Trump. They never even gave me a reason why I was banned. I was just banned for life. By the way, Stephen, I'm still banned on Facebook. I'm still banned on Instagram. So if you see a Roger Stone on Facebook, particularly if he's trying to sell you crypto or something, that's not me, folks. Don't sign up. Don't follow that person or that entity. It's not me. I'm not on Facebook. So I'm very grateful that I got my voice back. Now, once I got it back, I only had 25,000 followers, but I have worked very hard to build it up. So I think he's a great champion of free speech. I think he has an enormous amount of courage. The idea that you should be investigated and prosecuted for your political views, but that's what Kamala Harris says Donald Trump will do. You see, they're doing exactly the thing which they say he's going to do, but he didn't do during his previous presidency. So I pray for Elon's safety, first of all, because there are dark forces here who hate him. Mark Cuban is an incredible loser. You can watch Morning Joe. I think that's where Chris Matthews said Trump is going to have journalists put up against a wall and shot. No, he isn't. He's never said anything of the kind. I mean, Chris, you need to see a psychiatrist. There's something wrong with you. This is nutty. But that's the level of hatred. That's the level of Trump derangement syndrome in the country. I think Elon's already got 9 federal investigations into his businesses. Not because there's any evidence they did anything wrong. It's because he opposes the regime. And it's disgraceful.
Yeah, I agree. I hope good things for him as well. Two big things happened in the last week with Kamala, specifically regarding Christians. So she snubs the Al Smith dinner, which has been a tradition for decades of going to New York, having a few jokes, and raising money for children through the Catholic Church. It was very, very funny. Kamala decides not to go and does this making fun of Catholics 5-minute skit. Again, 5 minutes for her, 30 plus minutes for Donald Trump. And then within a couple of days, she is doing a rally where someone yells, "Jesus Christ is Lord." And she says, "You're at the wrong rally. You meant to go to the smaller one down the street." And everyone cheers. What are your thoughts on these two stories and her acting as if she's a Christian, but then doing very anti-Christian things?
I think it's disgraceful. I mean, look, I have been to several of the Al Smith dinners. I attended with Governor Reagan in 1980. I was there with him again in 1984. I was there when President Trump was there in 2016. The last Democrat, as you know, to skip the Al Smith dinner was Walter Mondale. In 1984, he carried one state. She would have been better off to send no video at all than the one she sent, which was deeply offensive, I think, to Christians and Catholics. And in that rally, she kind of shows you who she is. I mean, these people are secularists. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in Christ. They look down on people who are religious, people who do believe in the Lord, because they think it's, some kind of quaint fairy tale. It's insulting, and I think it's politically stupid. But it really does tell you who she is, and it's why she's about to lose this election.
Yeah. I tell my community all the time, the momentum is moving in Trump's favor, but he only wins if we actually get out and vote. We have to vote. We have to get other people voting. But this prediction from the Daily Mail of getting 312 electoral votes and winning the presidency, do you see that as coming true? Do you see that as being factual?
As of this instant, let's recognize that a poll is a snapshot in time. It's only good for that episecond that you take it and you tabulate it. 4 hours later, it's no longer completely accurate because people do change their minds, and attitudes are still shifting and decisions are still being made. So even one of my own cousins this morning texted me and says, "This is going to be a landslide." No, it is not going to be a landslide. And if you think that, and people begin to say that, well, then some people begin to think, well, I don't really need to bother to vote. Trump's got this wrapped up, and I was planning to be out of town that day. No, every single vote will count. Every single vote. Nothing is for sure. Nothing's in the bag. Yes, we're cautiously optimistic, but even here in Florida, where they have put a constitutional amendment regarding marijuana and a constitutional amendment regarding abortion on the ballot, that brings out more Democrats. I think they may be surprised. Some of those libertarians who come out to vote to legalize cannabis will be voting for Donald Trump. But those things are factors. So nobody should consider this a landslide. And while I think that projection is accurate today, the election is not today. The voting is going on, and I think that's a good thing. Looking at where the early votes are coming from in the states where that can be tabulated appears to be encouraging. But as they say, it's not over until the fat lady sings. And this is not the cake here is not baked. Let's rest after Election Day, and even then we can't arrest. But then it really is up to the lawyers and others. But at this point, overconfidence, Stephen, I think is our greatest danger.
Okay, I completely agree with that. Roger, you're a gem. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to catch your show or support you or follow you, what links can I send them towards?
The best place to go is stonezone.com. Stonezone.com. You can get everything there. Yes, I do a daily show on Rumble at rumble.com/Roger Stone. And then every Sunday, I'm on 77 WABC radio in New York. It is the biggest, most powerful, and influential radio show in the country. And to listen to that, you just go to WABCradio.com. We are live streaming 24 hours a day in 163 countries around the world. WABCradio.com. You can also download that app on your phone or the Rumble app. My show is The Stone Zone, but my website is stonezone.com. Check it out.
Okay. I'm going to put direct links to all of that. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all the research you do and helping us analyze and understand this. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Great to be with you, Stephen. God